And I've got a special guest joining me this morning. Kelvin Emmanuel is the CEO of Dairy Hills Limited. And today we're talking about monetary policy risk and Nigerian businesses. Good morning, Kevin. How are you?
Good morning. Good morning. How are you today?
Very well, thank you. Very well, thank you. And we're streaming this on YouTube as well, so you can catch the live stream. Just search for us on YouTube at Smooth981. So let's get straight in. Kelvin, I want to ask, how does a hike in MPR affect businesses?
So, how inflation has gone up, and the CBN always has to adjust the monetary policy rate or the interest rate to align with inflation. And the reason is because they are trying to prevent a negative return on yield. Because if the difference between the MPR, which is at 17% today, and the inflation rate, which is at 21.34%, even if I don't believe those numbers, if the difference is so much, there's going to be a negative return on yield. And this is a reason why also yesterday when, we're discussing, I was talking about the debt situation in Nigeria and, the government using the pension fund to buy the Ways and Means, the 40-year bond that is going to be issued, from the bad debts that the CBN gave to federal government that cannot be, recovered. So basically, they always try to align it. And over the last 11 months, they've increased that rate by about 500 basis points. 500 basis points is equivalent to 5%. 100 basis points is equivalent to 1%. And the more they increase the MPR, the more the banks increase their interest rates, the commercial rate, the deposit money bank increase the rate at which businesses borrow from them. So basically, it's the MPR 17% plus 1%. That's 18% to the commercial banks. The commercial banks then add their own rates and management fees, and that's what you lend money at. So basically, monetary policy tightening says that the central bank is trying to slow down the pace of growth in the economy. But the question is, what growth are you talking about? There's no growth at all. So the problem you have in Nigeria is that you're trying to slow down the pace of growth when you don't have any growth at all. They have a meeting coming up on Monday. The Monetary Policy Committee is a group made up of the central bank governor and the deputy governors. And they have an MPC meeting coming up this coming Monday where they are going to react to the inflation numbers that were released that said that there was a slowdown in growth. The question, in inflation, the question is, are they going to continue hiking from 17%, which is where you have it today, or are they going to keep the rate unchanged?
Okay. So that's the question, and we have to wait to find out.
Yes.
All right. How does the monetary tightening impact on industrial production outputs?
So, businesses need credit. They need credit to be able to produce. If they don't have credit, they won't produce. If the cost of credit is too high, they won't borrow because it will eat into their margins. And the cost of credit is becoming too high for Nigerian businesses, which is the reason why the lazy approach of the Monetary Policy Committee at the CBN, raising the MPR as a means to tighten the cycle and slow down the pace of inflation, in my own opinion, is not the solution to the problem. Because the more you keep raising the MPR, the more difficult it becomes for businesses to actually be able to produce. They won't borrow because the MPR is too high. You can imagine they continue to raise the rates, and then, for example, they continue to raise the rate and it goes above 20%, and the cost of credit keeps going up. So this is the conundrum that they have to face. They have to look at other means of making sure that they reduce inflation without increasing the interest rates to businesses.
All right. I want to ask as well, considering that inflation did slow down in December, what do you think will be the reaction of the MPC?
I don't believe those numbers. I don't believe those numbers because in the last 3 months, Nigerians have faced very, very steep shortage of petroleum products. In Lagos now, I'm sure you know that people are in fuel queue.
I know. I might be one of those people soon.
Okay, so and the inflation is basically your cost price index, which is inflation. It's basically like calculation of your energy and food prices. And energy is important because energy is important for logistics, energy is important for production, energy is important for transport, movement of people from one place to the other. If Lagos is facing so much fuel shortage, Lagos that receives a lot of the cargo for PMS into depots in Apapa and Tinkan. Tell me about other cities. Tell me about the shortage of petroleum products in other cities, in other parts of Nigeria, from where some of these petroleum products are transported from. So if there is a steep shortage, like we've not seen in a very long time, how can the MBS come to tell us that inflation is slowing down when energy is actually 50% of the inputs for the calculation of cost price index on inflation? MBS has about 10,400 respondents that are paid all over Nigeria, giving it updates on the price of energy and food and some other areas on a weekly basis. They're basically trying to measure price changes. Yeah. And then they tally the numbers through what they call a multilinear regressive model. So the question is, at what point is there a distortion of facts between the gathering of inputs, the submission of inputs, the calculation of inputs, and the releasing of those numbers? At what point is there a distortion? I absolutely do not believe in this country today where you go to the market today, they tell you that the price of Gary is at this level. You go to the market tomorrow, they tell you it has changed. You go to the market today, they tell you that a bag of rice is 39,000. You go to the market tomorrow, they say, guys, 41,500. How do you tell us that inflation is slowing down? At least Ghana.
But the rate at which it slowed down is very small, right?
It's very small. That's the question, because you have steep shortage of petrol and people are buying petrol at 25-30% increment in cost. If petrol is going for the price of petrol is going up because there's shortage of price, which is a normal thing when supply is low, prices go up. How can you say that inflation is slowing down? There's an anomaly somewhere. In between gathering of data, submission of data, calculation through multilinear regressive models, and releasing of that data, there is a distortion somewhere. And I don't believe those numbers because a few people will tell you they know how to do these things. I know how to calculate the CPI number. It's just that I don't have access to the data, the inputs from the 10,400 respondents across Nigeria. But if you take a guess on how difficult it is today for people to be able to access energy and food, and now there's a shortage of supply, it is no brainer for you to see that the inflation is not slowing down. Ghana has the kind of problems Nigeria has. The inflation rate in Ghana is 51.1%. At least they are honest about the problem they have. The question you have to ask the Nigerian government is, are we honest? Is the Nigerian government being honest with the people about the state of things? That's the question we have to ask them.
So what is the impact of MPC reacting to distorted inflation data?
So this is the issue, right? Because if the Monetary Policy Committee do not get the appropriate number, they will not be able to measure and take the right action. This is the problem. If you don't get the right number and they don't know the real state of things, whatever decisions they arrive at will be distorted too. This is the problem. You have to open up on the real state of things so that they will know what appropriate action to take.
Now, seen these figures are released every month. Have people shared concerns that over time, these figures have not been accurate? Or is this a one-off in the past year or so?
Well, we had flooding last year, and there was destruction of farms, especially the Middle Belt. In fact, one of the companies, I think it was Olams, that lost one of their biggest rice farms in Nigeria that was valued at about $22 million to the floods. The floods basically broke the dikes, which are like the prevention mechanisms that prevents it. The question was, I don't know if Olams had that farm insured. It's quite difficult to calculate actuarial analysis for insurance on agriculture. It's quite difficult, not very easy. Professionals in that sector will tell you. Amid that destruction of farmlands, the numbers on food inflation was released, and we saw that, it didn't really reflect. Quite a number of people drew the attention of the government to it. And this is why we need to come to a point where, regardless of how bad the problem is, at least we're honest about the real state of things. So they always say that a problem known is a problem half solved. If you don't know the problem, how do you solve it? And that's the reason why when people go into hospitals, the first thing they do is diagnosis. Because if the doctor doesn't know what the problem is, how does he administer the right treatment to the problem? This is the problem. We in the bid to not look bad, in the bid to try to look good, and this is the problem of also democracy. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong. Democracy is good, is better than, of course, dictatorship. But one of the flaws is that governments always want to look good to their electorates, and it's a problem. You have to be honest with the people. Things are not well with Nigeria. Let us admit it.
So I want to ask my final question. What's next for businesses now?
What I can say is for them to hang in there. I don't know how the next election is going to turn out. I don't know. I wish Nigeria well. I hope that the voters make the right decisions. But whoever wins the next election will really, really determine the direction, because Nigerians need reinjection of fresh leadership ideas on how to be able to solve the revenue challenge and change the model for funding for government budget, which will impact everything from monetary policy decision on interest rates, on inflation, and on Nigerian businesses being able to access credit. Being able to access credit is a major problem, and also the ease of doing business that people have. Being able to solve this energy crisis that we have today. I just hope that in February they get good leadership and things turn out well.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Kelvin Emmanuel, for joining us on Business Express this morning.
Thanks for having me, Zibby. Have a great day.
Thank you, and you too. And that is it for Business Express this morning. And yes, I see your messages coming through. Keep them coming. And let's move on to the music. At 7:30, it will be time for Freshly Pressed.